On the go? Download the free andrewhogue.com iPhone and Android app, so we'll never be apart. Not every day you're graced with the presence of an absolute legend in the field, but we'll introduce him right now because he can't wait to come back to Oz shortly for the Soundwave festivals, and we can't wait to see them on the stages across the country. We're talking about the mighty Exodus. Drum god Mr. Tom Hunting is with us right now to talk all about the up-and-coming appearances and everything else that's happening in the world of Exodus with the recent release of their 10th studio record, Blood In, Blood Out. Let's say g'day to Mr. Tom Hunting. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How could I possibly follow an introduction like that? Wow, dude. I'm firmly blown away.
Well, there's no script here, but I think I'm just stating the facts. I mean, you really look at the history of the band and also yourself. You know, the man certainly deserves some credit, and that's exactly why I said what I said at the top. And I guess the opening question is, what motivates you to continue playing heavy music, especially after all this time?
Well, I mean, we love it, and we love being part of this journey, and it started so long ago, and I think the music we make is still pretty relevant, and we're happy with the current status of our band. It wasn't always this good in the Exodus camp, and it's we have to celebrate the good with the bad, but right now things are good, so.
Now, when you look back, I know past is past, and people talk about not living in regret or anything like that, but I mean, do you think it sort of had to get to that point in order for it to sort of turn around and be at the level it is now and the way the band is running? I mean, people say you've got to go through the hardships sometimes to sort of come through the sort of victory periods. I mean, were there ever really any serious doubts with you as far as continuing being a musician in a band? I know you've left the band on a couple of occasions, but I know sometimes you really got to dig deep to get to the root of the problems. But I mean, tell us a bit about how, going through certain hardships and how it got you back out on the straight and narrow to continue, again, gracing the presence with your amazing drum god skills.
Well, I mean, this band's it's been quite a journey, dude. And, we've had everything from death to drug addiction to, albums that weren't that great, and but when we put out Tempo of the Damned, basically we were a band without a label. We were a band, two out of five of us were. Gary was still recovering at that point, and I was starting the battle of recovery myself, and Rick was still in the middle of it pretty heavily too. So we were a band without a label, but we just had music that we believed in. So we basically recorded the whole record and put it on a friend's credit card that also believed in the music, and we shopped it around, and Nuclear Blast liked what they heard and picked us up. But I think, it's just been a journey, and we're really happy to be in a band that's made 10 records, so.
Well, you mentioned before about the whole label situation, and as well as I how much the music business has changed dramatically. Even the last
Absolutely.
5 years, it's completely turned on its head. And for a band that's gone through the really bad times of the music biz back in the day, as people talk about how much bands have been ripped off, do you see more of a positive change with these changes that are happening now that the old model is sort of somewhat diminishing? And do you find it has given you guys a bit more creative control, not just on the music, of course, but more about guiding your own careers and being a bit more creative by kind of cutting out the middleman a little bit and going directly to the fans? I mean, what do you think you guys have sort of learnt through this process now? Has it sort of been a little bit of a, thank God the old's kind of diminishing and we're now can start afresh and really make a proper impact?
I think in terms of this music, album sales are down as a whole. So people don't really buy a lot of albums anymore or CDs. We're happy with the release of this one, and it was pretty well received. But in terms of this music, it's best delivered live anyway. So, and the fan base, especially after this tour we just completed, I'm pretty happy with the state of this music in this country, and I know it's still very strong in your country. I know that the festivals are very well attended. Our club shows do great there. At least the one tour that I went on there. But it is a different time, like you say, and I think you know, I grew up in an era where I bought albums, you know, and sometimes I stood in line to buy an album. I stood in line to buy Back in Black, you know, and I took it home and I carefully cut the plastic and smelled the inner sleeve when I opened it up and read about the band and what kind of symbols Phil Rudd uses and blah, blah, blah. And that kind of time will never happen again, I don't think.
Yep.
And, you know, it can't happen again. But I do feel fortunate to have grown up through it, you know. And I think, you know, I think we appreciated the music a lot more then. But I think in terms of this music, the fan base is strong. People are coming out to shows. They're still buying merchandise. You know, it's okay. It's okay that, you know, the album sales are down, as long as people still keep coming out. Because, like, if the fan base decides to stay home and not ever go to a show and just YouTube everything, we'll have to fucking retire. That's all there is to it.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're seeing that a little bit as well because, again, there's so many more options for people today, and I think that's why things have sort of turned on its head, and there's more distractions, and you know, people just got other... They're just doing so many different things because the fact that the floodgates have opened due to the technologies of the world that have sort of hit us pretty damn quickly. But as we mentioned about not having, you know, especially in the sort of era of growing up with buying music and things like that, what do you say to a sort of younger fan that's getting into Exodus? And again, most of the time, it generally isn't the younger fan's fault. They're just born into a new age. How do you kind of put that excitement across to them, even though it's something they'll probably never really get to sort of experience, but also to sort of keep it positive? Because sometimes I get impressions from older generations sort of having a go at the younger generation, saying, you know, it's not the way it once was, but at the same time, we obviously understand as humans we have to evolve and things do change. How do you know, if you're talking to a 15-year-old kid that's just got into the band and is excited and has seen all this sort of early footage of the band's career and just sometimes wishes that they could get that sort of same feeling, how do you sort of describe it to them, or at least explain to them about getting into it somehow?
Well, that's a really good question. We just finished this tour, and this big tour with SLAYER, Suicidal Tendencies, and Exodus. And, you know, we played some headlining shows of our own that were in smaller places. Some of them were little bars on a night off, like a one-off, when the tour wasn't playing that night. And, you know, we played with some really young bands. Like, you know, I was talking to 16-year-old musicians, and I would ask them straight up, I'm like, what made you interested in this music? And I think they like the musicianship that's in it, you know, and they like the way people play, you know, when they're playing this kind of music. And I have to say, like, some of these bands, like, we played a festival in Kentucky, and I sat there and watched some of the opening bands, and wow, you know, for a 16-year-old to be able to play drums like that, I was firmly blown away. And I think, you know, a lot of people, a lot of graybeards in our audience with their kids, you know, these days too, which is a good sign. I think they appreciate what we do, and, you know, I can't really speak to why it's happening, but I know when I was a young kid, I gravitated towards the music that my family listened to, you know, the elders, my brother, my mom's stuff, you know. That's the first thing I latched onto, so maybe that's what's happening. I'm not going to question it. I'm just happy that it is happening.
Looking at the career of Exodus, you're looking, 3 decades now, if not more. And I know we discussed about what sort of keeps you guys motivated. Now, when it comes to writing sort of new music, do you finding it's harder today to write sort of new music, or how do you get inspired to sort of start penning new material, especially, you know, the stuff you come up with on Blood In, Blood Out? Was that, you know, a hard process to sort of get new music together?
No, it wasn't, dude. I mean, it flowed pretty easily, actually. You know, we do things the same way pretty much every record, and it, you know, it starts with a guitar riff, and then the guys will get together. Usually it's drums and guitar that get together first in the writing process, and you know, I'll put beats to these riffs, and it's pretty organic, dude. It's just two guys in a room bashing it out, you know, over a pot of hot coffee or something. Sometimes it flows, sometimes the song will write itself, and sometimes you got to work on it, you know. When I sit down with Lee to try to play to some of the stuff that he's written, sometimes that takes longer. you know, we have a joke within our band that Gary makes moonshine and Lee makes fine wine, because sometimes the songs take longer to conceive, and then sometimes you'll have the gist of one in 20 minutes. You know, it just depends.
Well, back to Mr. Holt. I know he's doing double duty with Slayer and, of course, Exodus. I mean, is that getting a little bit hard sometimes when you want to sort of get together with Gary and he's gone? And, you know, I know you got to keep the sort of train moving, but, I mean, how are you dealing with that kind of change at the moment? Because everyone's talking about, is he a permanent member? Is he just helping out? He's been with them for well over 2 years now. What's the update on sort of where that's all at and how you sort of, or how's he juggling both juggernauts?
Well, I mean, it's physically demanding on him to be pulling double duty like that, especially when the bands tour together. But you know, everybody in Exodus, we're fully supportive of what he's doing. You know, he deserves this. I mean, he's carried the torch of this band for so long. You know, and he's been on every record. You know, he's the main writer of every record, you know, music-wise, and most of the lyrics as well. So, I mean, he's extremely talented musician. I mean, such a natural. I mean, the guy was born to play guitar, you know, and so this is good for him, and we support it. It doesn't do anything to hurt the profile of our own band as well, you know. So, I mean, we're pretty happy all around about it. Sometimes time does, you know, limit when we can get together and whatnot, but we work around it, dude. It's a problem worth working around.
Now let's talk a bit about profiling, and you know, it's kind of hard to know who really coined the whole Big Four thing. I think it's a little bit unjust in my sort of opinion. I mean, okay, four great bands, but I mean, that's when it becomes the whole debate, and I'm sure you've heard this 100 times now about, you know, X's should be in the Big Four, and then others talk about Death Angel as well, and Testament and things like that. I mean, what's your take on the whole hype surrounding that kind of moniker when really, you know, there's four great bands, but there's also a stack of other amazing bands, just like Exodus as well. I mean, you know, do you feel like the band, you know, hasn't been given its just rewards?
So you think there should be like a big 5 through 10,
or maybe a big 15? We got to add in Sadus as well, and plenty of other bands too. I just think that maybe the Big Four was just a little media hype machine that I guess took on a life of its own in some way. But you know, we're here to sort of educate people that there's other great bands as well that are pretty much standing neck and neck with those lot. And if anything, we're still releasing great albums.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to be, you know, brought up in that conversation, like if there is a Big Five, you know. And that metal show did a spoof on it, and then Lars said that we should be the fifth band if they ever put a Big Five together, and we'll take that, you know. We'll roll with that. We'll go on tour with those guys. It's fine. I mean, you know, this whole Bay Area thing that started so long ago, it's like, you know, the bands. You know, Testament is very relevant, and they're putting out records, and you know, their albums are killer. Death Angel's crushing it. Like every album cycle, they put out something amazing, and you know. But of course, I'm going to vote for my own band to be in that conversation. You know what I mean? And I think we were one of the originators of it, for sure.
Damn straight.
We would love to put our stamp on a fucking Big Five bill, for sure.
Well, let's get you to choose one of your favourite Exodus tracks of all time, and also one from the latest album, and a couple of last words to the Australian fans before you crush them with the mighty thrash of Exodus when you hit Soundwave 2015.
Awesome. All right, this is one of my favorite songs on the record. It's called Collateral Damage. It's got a lot of various influences that the band's been listening to for over the years. It's got a little punk rock, a little southern rock, and a little Exodus metal. Let's go with something that's got some groove. How about Deliver Us to Evil from Bonded by Blood?
Awesome. We can definitely check that out right now here on andrewhogue.com. And Tom Hunting, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure's mine, dude.
You too. Let's check out some Exodus now here on andrewhogue.com.